Hello, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is FrancisP. I'm a personal development recovery coach based outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And today we have a bit of a longer form video for you on challenging negative and unhelpful thoughts. And we're going to go through a couple different theories or thought processes on unhelpful and negative thoughts and how we can go about recognizing them and challenging them. I mean, there's entire textbooks written on this stuff, but we're going to get into a medium depth, I'd say, of, some of these different things and really huge theories in psychology that have helped a lot of people, including myself. All right, so let's get started. So first, like looking through a lens, we filter situations through our own perceptions and beliefs. You may have heard the saying, looking at life through rose-colored glasses. Well, sometimes those glasses aren't so rosy, and our experiences look and feel worse than they actually are. And I'm not sure if you've heard this saying, looking at life through rose-colored glasses, but essentially by having a lens, directly in front of your eyes, and the rose-colored glasses would make everything appear wonderful when perhaps it's not. You might have a darker pair of glasses on that are really kind of distorting things and maybe removing the color from your world, and that you're having a more negative perception than you really need to. And that we're actually making things more difficult or harder for ourselves in life than they really need to be. And to me, that's a shame. So, things only really need to be as hard as they are. I don't need to make things suck more in life. If anything, I could probably use more positivity, so how do we reframe these things? How do we look at them through a new lens that removes some of our own negative connotations from them? Alrighty, so a couple of different things that we're going to talk about are cognitive distortions and irrational beliefs. And they're similar, but different. And I'm going to explain how they're similar but different, but they're two different theories. And I think that they really are different tools from the same toolbox, I'll say. Alrighty. So first, Albert Ellis developed a theory that your beliefs about an event led to your subsequent negative feelings or behaviors. So you'll have an activating event, a situation or event that'll happen. You miss the bus, belief about the event. This whole entire day is going to go poorly. I'm already running late. I missed a bus. And the consequences, maybe now I'm upset, I'm angry, and these different things, how I feel inside. So you have an activating event, your belief about the event, and the consequence, your subsequent thought, feelings, actions, or behaviors. And to use the bus example, I'd have a event, activating event, miss the bus, my belief this shouldn't have happened, this is unfair, perhaps I'm feeling, the bus came early, the bus driver should be there at the appropriate time, and a consequence, now I'm angry at the bus driver, I'm angry at the bus company, instead of a more effective belief of, me preparing for these eventualities and getting there early, these different things. So you have this is essentially called an ABC tool. And they both use ABC tools, cognitive distortions and irrational beliefs. They actually have a different A, B, and C for each, but the theories they really lend themselves to one another. And Albert Ellis noticed irrational beliefs and demands that people place on life. Things must go my way. People must treat me well. I must perform well. The world should be fair. The bus should be on time. The bus should not be late. The bus must operate according to its schedule, these different things. The bus driver should, if he sees me running towards the bus, not take off and keep on going, because I was almost at the bus stop. These different things, to use an example. And, I haven't missed any buses in a long time, I don't currently ride the bus, but this is just one example to give you for how I can view a situation like a bus, and put these musts and shoulds on the situation. In reality, none of these demands work. Buses come whenever they come and only cause ourselves or myself to feel upset and disappointed. So if I'm saying people should treat me well, people should be fair, people shouldn't try to take advantage of me, people shouldn't try and manipulate me, people shouldn't have unrealistic expectations, my boss should be more understanding, these different things of how buses work, companies should. This is not how the world works. So if I continuously put these demands on the world, things should, things must. The person who's going to wind up being upset is me. So this lends itself to acceptance, that the more I can accept that this is kind of how the world works, and learn to get to the bus a little bit earlier without getting upset about the whole process. Learn how to not expect myself from other people consistently, but how to have boundaries and not get upset by these things. But just placing these irrational beliefs and demands on the world, it's not really helpful. And it's irrational because people are going to do what they're going to do. The bus is going to show up when they're going to come up, bus when it shows up. My boss is going to behave how they're going to behave, these different kind of things in life. Now, around the same time that Albert Ellis was talking about situations are irrational beliefs, like how we're perceiving them, these demands we're putting on them that are making us upset, Aaron Beck was noticing these common cognitive distortions, he called them, these common thinking patterns in his clients, specifically dealing with things like depression, anxiety, and situations like that. And if he developed a cognitive model that you'll have a situation and then your thought, and then an emotion related to that thought and situation, and now a behavior. Someone says something that I find offensive. I have a thought that, this person, they were doing this to hurt me. Now I feel slighted or I feel hurt. And now my behavior, perhaps I go and drink, or perhaps I say something back, or I do something passive aggressive, these different things. So some of these cognitive distortions, and this could be an example of mind reading, to start off with the first one, 12 common cognitive distortions. Mind reading. When you assume you know what others are thinking or feeling, like that person did this thing to spite me. You come out in the morning, your neighbor keeps parking close to your car, making it more difficult to get in your vehicle, and you're like, they're doing this on purpose just in order to make my life harder. That'd be an example of mind reading, okay? Next one be negative focus, when you ignore the positive aspects and only see the negative ones. Instead of thinking, I'm glad I have a car, I can drive to work. Now I'm sitting here focused on how someone's parking too close to me because it's inconveniencing my life, and how these different things can shape the way that we're feeling. See how we can take a small situation and already it's swaying how I'm feeling inside just based on how close somebody's parking to me. And these are real things. These are situations that people deal with on a daily basis. A lot of people do a lot of these things. Maybe you might realize you don't do all of them, but maybe some of them. But I know, first time I read this list, I realized I was guilty definitely of mind reading, and some of the other ones that we'll get to as well. So we have mind reading, negative focus, catastrophizing, when you expect the worst to happen, worst case scenario to happen to you. Like, I already know how this is going to go. To use my example earlier from the bus, now that I've missed the bus, I'm catastrophizing the whole rest of my day is going to be horrible because now I'm going to get to work. Now my boss is going to complain that I'm running late, and then that's going to set me behind. Then I'm going to be trying to play catch up all day, and you're already catastrophizing from the moment you miss the bus, or the bus is late. Like, I'm already playing this whole thing forward in my head. Next, labeling, when you label yourself or someone negatively, such as I'm a loser. Now, labels, when you're painting yourself with a broad brush, or I'm painting other people with a broad brush, whether it's any group of people, and people will say different things about men, women, races of people, groups of people, and it's just these labels. And even for yourself, just one individual, but to paint yourself with just this broad brush with this big label, sometimes are really not helpful. And especially negative labels such as I'm a loser, I'm a bad person. I don't even label myself, I'm a good person, I'm a bad person. I do good things, I do some not so great things, but having these labels that we just assign to things can sometimes be unhelpful as well. Should thinking, when you have rules or expectations how things or people should be or act. It sounds like irrational beliefs right there. If I'm putting these demands, especially irrational ones that are unrealistic, they've not been proven to be true, and aren't helpful to me, on the world, on other people, on situations, the should thinking, it's only going to lead to more emotional upset. It's a cognitive distortion. Overgeneralizing, when a single negative event occurs and you believe it is a pattern. That could be one bad thing happens in the morning and I'm thinking that's how the day is going to go. And you can see how they kind of blend together. I'm already focusing negative, catastrophizing, overgeneralizing, putting, should statements on the world and other people, Emotional reasoning, when you believe that how you feel is evidence or reflects reality. So when you're just purely in your emotional state and you're no longer thinking rationally, you're just off to the races with this catastrophizing and negative focus and labeling, and the bus driver did this on purpose, and my neighbor's parking next to me just to piss me off, and they're a jerk. That'd be a label, already. We're emotionally reasoning. We're not thinking, odds are they probably just weren't paying attention when they were parking, or there's not a fantastic parker. It's not something personal against me. This is just how life works. I can sit here and get upset, emotional reasoning about it, or I could maybe park in a different spot, have a conversation, learn how to communicate effectively, see if this is something that can be changed. Now I'm no longer using emotional reasoning. Fortune telling, when you think the future is set in stone and the outcome is sure. Well, if I do say something to them about parking next to me, they're just going to get mad. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. Maybe they'll tell you to F off, or maybe they'll say, oh, I didn't realize it was an inconvenience. I'm sorry. For me to even predict how the conversation is going to go is fortune telling. A lot of this stuff is just our brain's way of recognizing habits, and this is how things are going to go. We're trying to predict the future, but a lot of times we get it wrong. You'd be surprised if you try and predict your future, where you're going to be in 5 years, 10 years, how things are going to play out in different scenarios. I'm not sure if this happened to you yet in your life, but usually things don't go exactly as planned. So I've learned, how do I roll with things, communicate well, practice acceptance, how do I make adjustments to plans, and how do I persevere and build resiliency? Like, these are more beneficial and more rational than the fortune telling and emotional reasoning and should thinking and labeling. Get better at the process, like I say. Personalization, when you feel personally responsible or guilty for things you can't control. I mean, this can be all different kind of situations. Suppose you have I'll use an extreme situation. First one that comes to mind, like a loved one passed away and perhaps they were feeling ill, and you're like, maybe I could encourage them to go to the doctor more, or, what could I have done differently in the situation? Sometimes that's taking responsibility for something that's not yours. That's an extreme example, but here we are, Um, I think that a lot of times when we're injecting ourselves into situations, we have to recognize what is actually within our control, because very few things are. Very few things are. That's part of kind of acceptance, is learning what things are within your control and what things aren't. And learning how to not take responsibility for things that weren't your control to begin with. And to learn how to accept and take responsibility for things that are. Owning the truth. When you're certain that you are right and your opinion is the truth. Like, same thing with people are going to have different perspectives, especially if it's a perspective or an opinion on an event. There is no usually one objective truth, because different people can witness the same scenario, just like with these glasses, right? We're filtering it through with different labels, and we're going to focus on different things, and we're going to come away with a different perception of the experience. So a lot of times our truth in a situation can be different than somebody else's, and no one person owns that truth. So that's part of it, is also being willing to work with other people in the world, that we're all kind of operating from our own perspectives, and we're all in some ways doing some of these different things. And how do we just get through this the best way? That's the ultimate goal of all this, is how can we get the best results while everybody can try and win. How can we make this a win-win for everybody? Communicate well, people can feel comfortable, we can learn about ourselves, learn about our own cognitive distortions, irrational beliefs, get work done, get things done without emotional reasoning, without fortune telling, without catastrophizing. Like, how do we do this for ourselves as an organization, as groups of people? I think the more that we can spread this stuff in society, the better that off will be. Not owning the truth, these different things. Next is just world thinking. When you assume that everything in the world will be balanced fairly, things should treat things well, things should be fair. It'd be wonderful if they were, but unfortunately that's not the case. And I can sit there and get myself stressed out about that. Doesn't mean not to advocate for these different things, not to want fairness and justice in the world, but to recognize that a lot of times that is just not the case. Especially, when I'm dealing with different systems in treatment, and there's a lot of problems with a lot of the systems that I work in, especially in drug and alcohol treatment and different things. And I could sit here and get upset over it about what the problems are and funding and all these different things, but really, how does that help? Instead, what can we do with what we got? How can I make the best of it? How can I help people in the best way given the circumstances? Instead of just getting swept away by your emotions over it. How do I be functional? How do I and be happy while not placing irrational demands on the world, if that makes sense. Last, the control fallacy, and it kind of goes back to the other one with the personalization. When you assume you can control everything that happens in your life, let alone someone else's life, your kid's life, spouse, partner, parent, these different things. Think you control somebody else. Other people will, perceive things like you do. If I just explain how the situation happened in my truth, then they'll come around to my perspective. If I just explain it in a different way, they're not seeing it the way I'm seeing it. And I've watched people beat their head against the wall trying to explain something in a different way, hoping the other person's going to suddenly see things from their perspective. That's just not the reality. I'm not sure if you ever argue with somebody on the internet, but you're not going to change them to your point of view. Thinking that you are, that's irrational. So if you're sitting there in a comment section arguing with somebody thinking that you're going to make some point that's going to suddenly, they're going to have this aha moment and see it your way, that's irrational. It's a cognitive distortion. So that's like exemplary of these different things we're trying to do in our life is do things that actually make sense, are rational. Don't spend time arguing the internet with strangers because it's not helping anything. So how can I eliminate a lot of these other ways, whether it's getting upset about the bus, bosses understanding, companies not doing what they are supposed to, or systems not operating like they should, or a spouse not seeing things the way that you do, and your truth, and all these different things. Like, it's to help us get less upset and be able to function better in the world, to be at peace with these different things. It's really to manage stress also. It really accomplishes so many different things. I can't, I think, overstate the impact that learning how to recognize these different things and how to eliminate them from your thinking can be beneficial. Because, during our thinking process, humans, we sometimes distort the event in different ways. Some of the most common ones are listed on the previous page. These cognitive distortions can lead us to feel unnecessary hurt, pain, anxiety, anger, sadness, frustration, and they can negatively affect our mental health. If we're constantly feeling slighted by other people, the world, painting things with a broad brush and focusing on the negative, that doesn't feel good inside. And that's going to contribute to depression, anxiety, stress, these different things. So by changing the way I'm perceiving these events and people and interacting with the world, I can greatly change the way that I'm feeling about these different situations, that can really, really tremendously help with different anxiety, depression, different things like that, OCD, different things like this. People write books literally about how do I apply cognitive behavioral therapy concepts to anxiety, depression, OCD, any kind of, mental health disorder for the most part. And people walking around like that, to me, is a real shame, so how do we fix it? And I think, they've established first we catch the unhelpful thoughts. We become aware of our own irrational beliefs or unrealistic demands on the world and ourselves and our own cognitive distortions. Kind of look for when I'm putting these should statements, these must statements, anytime I'm using these words. Always, never. You always do this, never do that. If the moment you feel yourself, in that emotional state, or you're recognizing you're saying these words, because rarely is anything always or negative, or always or never. So I'm already emotionally reasoning or focusing on the negative or something. That's kind of a wake-up call to step back and recognize the emotional state I'm in and see if I'm doing any of these cognitive distortions, irrational beliefs. Then we catch ourselves thinking irrationally and working on challenging our own unhelpful and inaccurate beliefs. Is it really always or never? Is this personalized? Am I catastrophizing? Am I being overly emotionalist? Am I thinking clearly? Am I putting these should or must demands? Am I mind reading? Am I jumping to conclusions? These different things. So once I recognize I'm doing this, now I can change it and go, okay, actually, here's what's going on. Odds are my neighbor is just not really paying attention. They're dealing with their own stuff. So when they park next to me, they probably just came home from a long day of work. They're tired. They're not really paying attention. And they just get out of their car. Maybe they do notice, oh, crap, I'm a little bit farther over, but I'm so tired. I just want to go in the house and get something to eat, because this is life. This is how other people are operating. They're not like, oh, yeah, let me park close to somebody. Or the bus driver is not like watching you, come by, ha, I left them at the, bus stop. Maybe they are. It's maybe a small percentage chance. Odds are you're walking up and it's like, oh crap, oh, it's too late. Like that's usually how life is. People are human beings. People make mistakes. If I can just give everybody else room to be human, give them the grace to make mistakes, to mess up, it's okay. People are going to drop the ball. People aren't going to remember to do things that they said they were going to do. Like, this is life. So if I can have these new effective beliefs like acceptance, giving people, the room to be themselves, to grow, I can change them a narrative to a more rational and helpful one in order to think more clearly. And giving other people space and grace, right? That sounds like it's a lot more at peace place to be in my heart. Then everybody should be doing what they're supposed to be doing, and people need to be better at their jobs, and yada yada. Putting these demands, it just now I'm walking around stressed, and this is how I used to walk around. That's what I mean. Like I've worked through this stuff to be like, people are just human beings. People usually aren't doing anything on purpose. They're struggling like everybody else. Life is hard, so why don't we all lighten up on each other a bit, and then we can all get through this a lot more easily. And repeat this as often as necessary. You're going to have days where this is easy to just, give everybody lots of room to grow. People are cutting you off. You're like, it's okay, buddy. And then you have days where you're driving and somebody cuts you off and you're like wanting to honk the horn and yell at them. Like, this is a process. Nobody bats 1,000. Give yourself that same room to grow, that same grace, to be a human being. We're all working through this stuff. Alrighty. See, this is a lifelong process of recognizing and challenging our own irrational beliefs and cognitive distortions, but is rewarding work and will relieve you of unnecessary stress. So become like a detective in your thinking and beliefs, looking for evidence to support your negative feelings. Is what I'm thinking or feeling accurate, or am I distorting it in any way? Am I being irrational or placing unrealistic demands on myself, others, or the world? And I would encourage you to check out that list of cognitive distortions and kind of go through them and think of maybe some that you do, especially in regards to maybe people around you, whether it's a partner, your children, like other times, a boss, coworkers, places that you do these commonly in your life. And then how can next time that I'm frustrated or upset about something, recognize, am I using any of these cognitive distortions or irrational beliefs? To help work through some of these emotional upsets. Or maybe there are things with ourselves. Next time that you mess up something and you drop the ball on something, to not place such unrealistic demands on yourself, like I must be perfect all the time. Like computers aren't perfect. Things mess up. People are fallible, so give yourself that same grace. So I encourage you to look into, study, and seek support learning about these concepts. This is only a drop in the bucket of information about irrational beliefs, cognitive distortions, and their respective contributions to psychology. And for Albert Ellis, that's Rational Motive Behavioral Therapy, REBT, and Cognitive Behavioral Therapy for Aaron Beck. But there's loads of books and information, websites all about these different concepts, and I truly encourage you to, the more familiar that you get with them, the more that you can recognize, some of the irrational beliefs or cognitive distortions, the easier it gets to catch them in the moment, so that way you can steer yourself away from that emotional place. And so the goal is to not have emotions. You're a human being. You're going to get upset by things. Things are going to sting sometimes, but it's to not get swept up by it and not let it color and taint everything that you see and look at. So that way, beginning of a negative day, doesn't need to spiral into a bad day. If a couple things happen, it's okay. You don't have to let things derail you or psych yourself out in different situations. Or anxiety, suppose you have a big interview coming up and you're psyching yourself out before the interview that it's going to go really poorly and I'm probably going to fumble over my words. You're filming a YouTube video like this and I psych myself out before I can even film the video. It's not going to help. So how can I not catastrophize? How can I not, jump to conclusions, predict the future, all these different things in order to not let myself get so swept up into my own anxiety, depression, different things like that. negative emotional states, rational and negative beliefs. And lastly, thank you. Anybody who's been checking out these videos, I encourage you, a lot of these videos, they jump around in different areas because there are so many different parts to personal development and recovery, and they all intertwine, and it's not until you kind of start building the pieces together that you see how they work together. Things like irrational beliefs and cognitive distortions and your thinking and how they work towards achieving your goals. And as always, for personal private coaching, you can either look at my website, premiumpersonaldevelopment.com, or email me, FrancisP at premiumpersonaldevelopment.com. And I encourage you to also comment. If you have any questions, feel free to comment below, and I'll be happy to answer. All right, thank you. Have a great day.